Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on the part of the world you're in. We'll just wait maybe another 30 seconds or so and get started. Hey, Judy.
Hi, Tweety.
Uh, and folks, please tell us where you're joining us from, different parts of the world, or depending on where you are. Just make this discussion more engaging. The more you ask us questions, the better. But we'll kick it off. This is an event that we host every month, and we try to do it on the second Tuesday of every month at 10 a.m. Pacific. And even though if you're not able to attend, do register, or you can come back and watch the recording using the same registration link. And please, it's very informal. It's our team sharing with you how we are using automation and AI together to solve some critical problems. And some of those could apply to you. So feel free to ask questions anytime during the demo. And we'll try to answer them in the course of the demo, or we'll follow up with you. It's always good to know, although, somebody posted the other day that the whole OpenAI, I don't want to call it a revolution, but it's a movement that has been around for a year now. But yet, not every organization has adopted or got into this bandwagon with the same enthusiasm. So it would be good if you can tell us where you are personally or from an organization standpoint in your journey with Gen AI. Like if you're still learning, exploring, but you don't have any concrete plans, you have some projects planned, you're already actively integrating with Gen AI, or your organization has security concerns and taking a very cautious approach. Or the last one is you're excited, but you're unsure where to get value. So tell us where you are in your journey with Gen AI. It will also help us bring the right set of content to share with you in the future. And finally, like, this is a very topical webinar, but not a topical event. But at the same time, you could be looking to explore what's the art of the possible with Gen AI, or just get to know how to use Gen AI, or your specific interest in using Gen AI for localization. So tell us where your interests lie on that. And I guarantee that's the last of the surveys I'll post before we dive into the demos. So, all this information helps us design these events and design the content better. So please share what you're looking to learn. That said, I'm super excited with the speaker that we have today. She's part of the Workato team, and she will do her own introduction. But the most exciting thing is what we're going to demo is a real problem that we faced last year when Gen AI was not available, and now we are rethinking the whole how to solve the same problem around localization with automation and AI. And Judy, who is in our docs team, she has been pained by the previous way of doing things, and hopefully she's delighted with what Gen AI brings. So who better to talk as a practitioner than Judy about this use case? So Judy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Trudy. Yeah. So I have been a technical writer at Workato for about a year now. And one of the challenges my team faces is we are a small but mighty team. Workato is always public releasing new features. And there's a lot of work for our team to do to adequately document our features so that information is in our customers' hands. And so, even though in the past year our team has grown, we need to scale our documentation efforts to meet this rising demand. And so, we've been able to do that by using automation and generative AI to um, scale the translation and localization process.
Thanks, Judy. And you have a lot of exciting stuff to share. But localization, like if your product brand, whether you're e-commerce, regardless of the industry you're in, if your product or service is used across the globe or in multiple countries, there's a good chance that you need, like your teams are working on localization efforts. And as we know, localization has a wider impact in terms of the organization go from brand recognition to driving revenue growth to driving new customers and new markets, customer retention, it's definitely a competitive differentiation. So much so, like there was some e-commerce study that was done where they shared 76% of the shoppers would buy more if the content of the e-commerce site was in a language that they preferred than if it was in English. And 40% of them would not shop at all if the content was not localized. So those are just some stats to give you some context around the importance of localization. And but when you think about localization, it's not just the website. Like every function in the business, like whether it be your chat bots that support team users or product team users to converse with customers, whether it's your email marketing or support emails or product emails, personalization, the job offer generation, some depending on the region you're in, it needs to be generated in different languages. E-learning course translation, knowledge base localization. All these are some examples. By no means these are exhaustive. But for today's demo, we have Judy who will talk about a specific problem, especially for products and services where you need to localize your technical documentation. And before we dive in, there's oftentimes uh, localization is construed as the same as translation, and it's not. Translation is a part of localization, but as a part of the localization process, you need a lot more control to collaborate with your team to make sure, like in case of a product, the design, the content writing team, the docs team, everybody is aligned in terms of how you communicate with the users in a certain geography with the right context. You also want to speed up the cycles, right? It's not just translation from English to another language, but you also want to shorten the cycles. So you want to work efficiently as a team and ensure the quality of what you deliver, quality in terms of completeness of what the content is, quality in terms of the voice of your brand, quality in terms of factual, the authenticity and the accuracy of data that you present. So a lot of those things go beyond translation. And depending on the geography, all those things have to be taken into account. And Judy, this is where you take on and show us how it's done.
All right. So last year, our Workato's customer base was growing and expanding into Japan, where there's a high need for localized content in Japanese. And so our team started preparing content for localization. Um, and so we were taking the conventional route of working with a third party translation vendor who would manually review and translate the content. And so one of the things that we would experience is we'd send over a batch of files. and it would take weeks for them to be returned to us. And because our documentation site is huge, we knew we couldn't get all of our content right away. So we had to make decisions about which content to prioritize for translation first. And, when we would get the translated files back, we would go through a typical review cycle, request changes. And one of the things that one of the challenges we ran into was our vendor was not familiar with Markdown syntax or version control systems. And a lot of my team's time and energy was spent teaching those systems or manually fixing errors in the translated content. So time would pass, we'd update the content, the vendor would update it based on our reviews as well. And then finally, the content, we would publish the content. And this was a process, localizing the entire documentation site. It was a process that we thought would take about a month. It ended up taking almost a year to localize the majority of the site. And as you can imagine, having extremely slow turnaround times has a negative impact. So it's expensive when you're working with a third-party vendor because you're paying them hourly. It's a stressful situation all around, and overall low productivity. When you have deals that are contingent upon having localized content and there are delays, you might run into lost revenue because you're not able to deliver content in the local language. And all of this equates to overall poor quality and poor customer experiences. And you can also run into inconsistent brand voice when you're working with a third party that's not an expert in your domain. So we needed a solution that was scalable and was also high quality. And here you can see a side-by-side comparison of the same document in English and in Japanese. We'll dig a little deeper into our solution and metrics that we use to evaluate the content. So for us, we to evaluate the quality of the generated documentation, we defined 5 criteria. So fluency, naturalness, accuracy, formatting, and brand. And these are metrics by which we judge all auto-generated content.
And JD, just to maybe it's may not be obvious, when you as a technical writer write in English, right? There's the fluency; it's a human writing things. But when you generate it using AI, you want the same human-like conversational tone. That's what the fluency and naturalness comes in. Okay.
Exactly, Trudy. Yeah. One thing is, we don't want a copy-paste solution where the output is not typical for the target language. We want something that sounds natural in how people actually speak. So this, at a high level, this is our new process. It all begins in our version control system, which is GitHub, with a request for localized content. Workato orchestrates this whole process, and upon that request, sends the content to OpenAI, which extracts and analyzes it, translates it into the local language, and runs quality checks. Then Workato creates a new branch in our GitHub repository, generates the content. Then we send the content to OpenAI for scoring, open up a pull request, submit a request for a manual review from a user, and then publish. So through this, we're able to translate and localize content in a matter of minutes. So I'll show you how it all works. So if we go into our GitHub repository, here we have a pull request, which has already been reviewed by a team member, and it's ready for localization. So to kick off the workflow, we'll simply add this localization ready label. And that tells Workato to begin translating the files. And here's our recipe, which orchestrates everything. So our trigger event listens to changes in our repository and responds when there is a new or updated pull request in GitHub. Because we don't want every single new pull request to automatically run through this localization workflow, we've configured special conditions that will only trigger the flow. This allows for a typical review cycle to complete before translating the content. So Workato extracts the files from GitHub, creates a new branch, and in this step, calls a function recipe, which actually translates and grades the content using OpenAI. So you can see trigger event responds to the call from the parent recipe. Here we create a series of variables to handle our markdown file content, as well as scoring criteria. Our scoring criteria are actually housed in a lookup table within Workato. So here you can see our 5 categories: naturalness, fluency, accuracy, formatting, and brand, along with the weight that we've assigned to each of these categories and a standard that we want OpenAI to follow. Before we get into the actual prompt with OpenAI, I do want to call out one other important step. As many of you are probably already aware, OpenAI has character limits and token limits. So if you were to send it the entire PR contents in one prompt, you would experience a timeout. So we've chunked our markdown file content into smaller pieces so that we can send them to OpenAI separately to avoid those rate timeouts. So step 10 and 11 are where our conversations with OpenAI happen and where the translation occurs is step 10. And step 11 is where we score and evaluate the translation. Similar to how you don't want a student to grade a test that they've completed, we don't want OpenAI to essentially score its own work. And the way that we've handled this is by passing a particular persona to OpenAI. So during the translation step, you can see it's this docs translator role, which is a project property. So this basically gives OpenAI instructions on the role to assume. This role is accompanied by a prompt that provides specific instructions on how to handle the file content. We've included examples of how to handle common elements that they'll encounter in the file, as well as specific English terms to preserve. And additionally, we provided guidance on how to handle in-text links. So if our content links to another part of our site, we want the translated and localized content to reference the Japanese version and not the English version. So we provided instructions for how to handle that. Finally, we pass in our markdown file chunks. This next step, we've passed a different persona to OpenAI. It's the technical checker role, where we've instructed OpenAI to assume the role of an evaluator. We've also fed it our localization metrics. And in the content prompt, we provided further guidance on how to score the PR. Additionally, we've passed the sample format, which is also housed as a project property at our sample JSON. And then we've provided the English Markdown content chunk as well as the Japanese Markdown chunk. So Workato updates the variables, passes this back to our parent recipe, which creates new
Judy, if we can, maybe folks, we went through a lot of things. If we can just, if you have questions, please post on the comments. But Judy, maybe the first part, like where that was interesting, if you go to the translation step using OpenAI for translation, one, like the prompts that you've used, and I know we are talking about technical documentation, but if it could be some other type of content, the prompts definitely matter. Like, can you elaborate on the prompts a bit, how you design the prompts, and also the role, how it has been set up, one of a translator, that of a technical reviewer, so you could potentially create multiple roles similar to like how a real workflow works, where you have a editor as well, somebody who provides the editorial review. So you could configure all those within OpenAI and then invoke that in the Workato recipe.
Exactly. So what we've done is we're storing these roles as a project property, which would allow you to reuse them within the same project. So this is a step that's highly customizable based on your needs and team makeup. As Trudy said, you could simulate you can simulate the review process.
So if it was a marketing email or a customer support email, you could similarly create equivalent roles for those workflows, and you use it in the same way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just a simple matter of defining your new property and providing the description of the role you want OpenAI to assume.
Okay.
Yeah. The other
And Judy, the other part we called out, it's kind of like there's a human, like when humans are involved in this process, like it's very easy to say, oh, Tom writes creates the translation, and then Jane does the review, and so on. Here we have used AI to replace those humans, to play those roles and automate that part as well.
Exactly. So our step 11, our scoring step, is fed a separate persona, one of the technical checker role. And so we've provided the checker our localization metrics. One thing to note is that's not information that we shared with our writer role. It's something specifically that we trained this role on. And so those metrics are stored in a lookup table within Workato. So this is another thing that is highly customizable based on your workflow. You can assign, as many categories as you might want, different percentages for how the model should evaluate the translated content, as well as a standard of standard criteria that you want the content to meet.
So, and the part of these, you can in this you can completely say the tone should be a certain way. I'm just expanding this from a technical docs to say when you're responding to a customer email or personalizing a marketing email, you could change the tone. So all these is completely configurable. The weight and the prompts are fully configurable based on the use case.
Yep, exactly. And then you can further customize the content that you want to see in the actual prompt, or in the content part of the prompt. So you can provide specific instructions on, this is a better example of the format that you want your response in. So you could say, I want this response in a list. I want this response to include call to actions. and links to my e-commerce site or something similar. Um, and OpenAI will intelligently create content based on your formatting instructions. And I feel like that's one thing that's important to highlight is it can simulate natural language, but it also handles formatting very well. Um, let's see. Is there anything else you want to cover on the AI prompting,
I
Judy?
think, Judy, maybe just talking about the challenges as we talked about the manual process, right? The vendor that we worked with, they would not be familiar with Markdown. Like they would just give us content, and there was a lot of effort that went into actually converting that into Markdown, which was manual as well. So, if you can speak how that has been solved for.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the important things is, we're preserving the original Markdown syntax throughout the entire process. Originally, they were stripping the file of the Markdown syntax, translating it, and reapplying the formatting. And that caused a lot of errors. If you can imagine acting as a human linter and like manually fixing linking out errors in over 1,000 files is not fun. Even if you have an action that checks for it, you still have to fix it. From my standpoint, this is one of the biggest process improvements is intelligently handling the files and preserving this format. Um, so just kind of recap when those conversations are done with OpenAI, our function recipe returns the content to our parent recipe, which essentially it'll add our scoring as a commit comment in GitHub, as well as create a new pull request and assign a reviewer. And all of this is highly customizable based on your organization's needs. You can customize a lot of GitHub actions. You could even extend this to different applications based on your publishing workflow. So we'll go back to GitHub because the process is already complete. As you can see, this PDAC65 add connections was our original file, and Workato has generated our translated document. A couple of things to note here. We've modified the title to easily differentiate it from the parent document. Here we have a quick preview of our overall localization score, and we can look at this in more detail. This serves as a good guide for our reviewers so that they're able to optimize their time during the review process and pinpoint areas to focus on. And we can also,
And Judy, the scorecard is primarily to assist with some faster decision making, right? There's still a human review, but they can just look at the scorecard for some call outs.
yeah, exactly. The scorecard, serves as a guide, and it makes the review process quicker. Here you can see that, in a matter of minutes, we've been able to generate the Japanese localized content. It's well, we can go over to this slide to look kind of in more detail how it meets our criteria. But at a glance, you can see that Markdown syntax is preserved. We're preserving brand names as well. So here we've kind of broken apart the generated document. As you can see, the information hierarchy is preserved throughout the text. All of our links work Um, Brand names are preserved. Protocols and technologies that are specific to our domain are also preserved in the text. Some examples are OAuth 2.0 and 1.0 API. Workato is preserved throughout. And another thing to call out is the sentence construction is natural for the target language, which helps the text flow. And OpenAI has also followed our translation instructions, and so the text is accurate based on that. So this is a deeper look at what a scorecard might look like. I think some of the key things I'm really impressed by are the way it handles brand terms, and being able to input logic that says, "Hey, I want this preserved in this way," is really cool in formatting. So, with this process, we're seeing faster turnaround times. We're no longer waiting weeks or months for to get our localized content back. Um, we're taking the whole project management and interfacing with third parties out of the loop, so that's lowering our costs, lowering stress, and increasing productivity. And we have near instant go live. So with the pull request that I shared, you could sync your localized content to release when you publish your English docs. And overall,
And Judy, the workflow just you walked us through. I know we have a demand for Japanese translation, but it could easily be extended to Korean, Spanish, French, or so on. The process and everything will be just similar. The prompts might change a bit here and there, but the process, it's very easy for us to scale our localization from this point on.
yeah, exactly. And you could accomplish it by forking your recipe to take different paths based on uh, the target language that you want. Um, but if you created persona roles, you wouldn't have to duplicate that work. If you created localization metrics, you wouldn't have to duplicate that work,
Right.
and you can still orchestrate it all in the same flow. Mhm.
And Judy and Carter asked this question, which is very pertinent. All this is great, and these don't quantify the impact of the use of automation in AI does. If we can go to the next slide, and this is a back of the napkin kind of calculation, but it won't be very far from being accurate. Like if you think about it, like we had over maybe close to 1,500 pages, and each page like typically take not just the translation part, but the effort to from submitting it to the vendor, to the multiple back and forths, to getting it published, like converting it to the right markdown, the quality checks, and so on. It probably took 8 hours per page. If you do that kind of math, it's like 12,000 hours. And then there are multiple teams, and I personally know Judy like was spending 40% of her time on localization, where she could have easily spent that time on writing content for new releases and so on. So it creates that capacity for us as a team, not just the hours saved, but it creates the capacity for us to take on more localization projects without having to incur more costs, whether working with third-party services or hiring more employees to solve for this problem, right? So hopefully, Carter, that gives answers to your question. But again, beyond the hours saved, that's a metric to look at. But as we looked at, localization has much bigger impact. It helps you grow in different markets faster, talk to your customers in those markets in the language they prefer, drives more brand awareness and like brand affinity. So those are some immeasurables. Probably we will cover later. We can go to the next one, GD. So, folks, I'll just summarize. Like we looked at how we could use AI and Workato to bring AI into your workflows. This is just another example. Hopefully, gives you ideas what you could do for localization using AI. Next one, and then this is just like it's not just for any particular department, across departments, across business processes, workflows. Similar benefits of using AI and automation exist. You just have to look closer and rethink. Uh, and like if you're already using Workato, we do make there's OpenAI, but using the APIs that OpenAI provides is not as easy. So OpenAI makes AI easy, but they don't make the API integration and automation easy. That's where Workato comes in. So what Judy showed you, you could build it on your own fairly quickly with very little training. So try out Workato if you have it already, and try out other use cases. Next one. Yeah, and we are a platform. It's an enterprise grade platform. So in terms of the privacy of your data, keeping your data protected, making sure you only share what you want to share with the third-party services and so on, there is a fair amount of controls that exist in the platform that the platform takes care of, and you as a user have. So you should have very little concern about using AI and Workato together to solve these problems. Yep, and it's all available today. So thank you for joining us. Hopefully this was useful for you to stir some ideas. If you have feedback, if you have other ideas, questions, please post that in the comment section, and we'll follow up. Judy, thanks for the fantastic demo. I hope it truly reduces AI and automation is truly reducing your stress levels than how it was last year. That's the number one metric.
Yeah, it's a big improvement. Thanks, Judy. Happy to share.
Hey, thanks everyone. Bye.